Welcome back into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, week number 8, part number 2 with our two-hole hitter here at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter. You can hear it in his name. He knows the group of 5 conferences, the mid-majors, if you will, very well. Also works for ESPN Richmond and does a radio show where he interviews coaches all around that area. So we are loaded with a lot of that content for this episode. And without further ado, Matt Josephs, welcome in. How you feeling, buddy?
Feeling good. I could sense the doubt in you last week when I dropped a money line parlay on the show, and JMU obviously came in, and the Hurricanes didn't exactly show up, so North Carolina came in.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, we'll take winners any way we can get them. And Matt Josephs, guys, he's hit 3 straight best bets for the podcast, and I think he's 5-2. Don't have it in front of me here, Matt, but absolutely, man. JMU money line, UNC money line for the plus 161 as well. You got some plus price on that.
Yeah, and it's funny because the line, I think, in the JMU game jumped a little bit too. So we got a little bit of value compared to what it was. I think it went off like 6, 6.5, 7. I love the Dukes. Obviously, they play tomorrow, so I don't have that in my group. But it's really funny, Drew. The best group of 5 team is not going to go to the New Year's Day Bowl because James Madison is the best group of 5 team, and they're not bowl eligible unless every slot is not filled.
Oh, man. Okay. And they of course play Marshall tomorrow, laying 3 and a hook. Do you like them in that one? I know that's not our section, but do you like the Dukes against Marshall?
I wondered, JMU's had all these large games week after week, but you can't bet against them. You just can't bet against them right now because they're playing so well. Their run defense is absolutely amazing. Although, caveat, they haven't faced a really great running team yet this season, but still they're doing tremendously. And we know Marshall can't throw the ball, so at least matchup-wise lines up well for James Madison to win this game coming up tomorrow.
All right, guys, we're getting into it. 3-4-1, 3-4-2, Duke, Florida State down to Hawaii, New Mexico. We're going down in rotation order. If you're new to the Every Game on the Board podcast, we go down every single game in college football. 3-4-1, 3-4-2, Duke, Florida State, 7:30 Eastern, prime time in Doak Campbell. Minus 13.5. That's the Noles as the home favorite. 49 being the total. Duke has lost 21 straight up to Florida State. However, this is the best Duke team I can ever remember. Can they stay within 2 touchdowns? That's kind of the question here, Matt, from a side perspective. I know you know Duke very well, Florida State as well. What are you liking in this ACC matchup?
It's pretty crazy. I don't think people realize Duke is the 4th ranked scoring defense in the country. Now, part of that is outside of Clemson, they haven't played a ton of great teams. Obviously, Notre Dame, whatever you perceive Notre Dame to be, that was one of their other games. But Duke's defense has been absolutely incredible in year 2 under Mike Elko, and we know that's what Mike Elko does is preach defense here. Coming off the 24-3 win over NC State, they get a Florida State team that's obviously been really good. The last 2 weeks, they've held serve at home. They beat a bad Virginia Tech team, and they beat a bad Syracuse team, as much as it's tough for me to say. There is no look ahead for Florida State. They play at Wake Forest next week, so they'll be fully focused for this one. My lean for this game, Drew, is probably the under. I mean, Duke's offense, we don't know if Riley Leonard's going to play. Maybe if you like the under, wait until Riley Leonard gets announced in or out, and then see if he announced in, maybe it ticks up a point or 2 because they think Duke's offense will be better. If you like the under now and you think that Riley Leonard's not going to play, it's probably going to tick down a little bit. So I would say the under is probably the way to go in this one.
Okay, you can get it at 49 right now, guys. We're also seeing Florida State minus 13 in the hook as the home favorite pretty much across the board. Just one sports book, that's Bet Online, showing minus 13. So if you like the Noles, maybe check out BOL, the proud sponsor of Every Game on the Board podcast, starting this week, guys. Really happy to have them. Check them out, betonline.ag. The game starts here. We got Rutgers and Indiana up next here, Matt. Big Ten matchup kicking us off on Saturday, 12 noon Eastern, 40 being the total, with the Scarlet Knights laying 5 on the highway here in Bloomington, Indiana.
So I'm going to mention this a couple of times, and I know we had a YouTube comment last week. They're like, man, you mentioned the weather every game, and it was the same thing. You didn't have to do that. Well, I mean, I kind of do, because some people skip games and just want to pay attention to specific games. So I hate to tell it to that guy, but there's going to be a couple of games in this thing where there's at least double-digit wins. And obviously, as we said, this is Wednesday. Weather can change and things like that. But we're more concerned about wind than rain because double-digit wind gusts can, slow down some passing attacks. So it's at least going to get mentioned whenever I see it, at least from weather.com, because we had that question last week from weather.com. This game, obviously, it's not going to be one of those games you have to worry too much about the passing attack. Rutgers has arguably the worst quarterback room in the Power 5. But somehow they came back. They got the win over Michigan State. They're feeling really good right now. So you've got a positive Rutgers team. Rutgers being a road favorite, they've been a road favorite 7 times the last 10 years. They're 3-4 against the spread as a favorite. Now, look, different coaches, different teams, all sorts of stuff. Take that for what you will. Indiana scored that first touchdown against Michigan. One of my wins last week was I took over half a touchdown for Indiana. It was at a nice price. And they scored the first touchdown, and I got an early win on that one. And then Michigan scored the next 52 points. They're just a bad team right now. They're just not very good. Their offense isn't very good. Their defense isn't slowing anybody down. They're still trying to figure out a quarterback situation here. But there's not a shot in hell, Drew. Even if they win this game, which they probably will, you will never catch me laying points on the road with Rutgers. Like, it's just not one of those things that I will be doing. This will be a pass situation for me. But if you are betting this game, watch the win because that may help out people who may want to take the under in this one.
Sure, Matt. Yeah, mentioned in the comments here, YouTube, Kevin, we did see that, the weatherman Matt, but we also had some great comments here from Jaguar and Jack Kitchen saying he loves hearing this analysis. So, hey, the good, the bad, the ugly, it's all welcome here in the comments below and on Twitter at Midmajor Matt, at Drew Martin Bets, and wherever you're downloading your podcasts at. Please rate and subscribe every game on the board. We got 345, 346 up next, 2 o'clock Eastern. Charlotte and East Carolina. We're seeing the Pirates of ECU -7 at home, 40.5 being the total. So we get the 49ers on the road. And something I noticed here, ECU, that's a pretty good home field atmosphere, I guess we could say, Matt. Have you ever been there? What are your thoughts on it? What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I went there, 5-6 years ago. I saw a Temple, East Carolina Thursday night game there. As people know, I'm a Temple fan. So I went down there. It is a great atmosphere. They go a little bit much on the Pirate stuff, but look, if that's going to be, if you're the East Carolina Pirates, you're going to do a lot of R's and, things like that. And so, but yeah, it is a great atmosphere. It is a team that if the ACC ever wanted to expand a little bit more, maybe they would look in their footprint at East Carolina. With the crowd support they get. Obviously, basketball, they don't add very much. But in this situation, once again, potentially double-digit wins, something to monitor as we get closer. Once again, also, we're not getting to passing attacks that will be affected by it because neither team's that great at passing the ball. I don't know about you, Drew, but while Charlotte's not playing well, they're trying. They're trying really hard in these games. That Navy game, it was 0-0, I think, into the third quarter. Was a scoreless first half. Their offense isn't very good, but their defense has been pretty good. Every once in a while, you always worry about a team coming off the triple option beating, but of course, these are teams that are running the triple option a little bit differently. East Carolina coming off the 31-10 loss to SMU here. This probably will be a game I skip, Drew, but I wouldn't fault anybody who would consider Charlotte. They try really hard under Biff every week, and a touchdown here with two teams that don't score very well, don't do a lot very well. You almost kind of lean to the underdog here in this situation.
Matt, next game up, we got UTSA and FAU. That's University of Texas San Antonio at Florida Atlantic, 6 o'clock Eastern in Boca Raton. And we are seeing the Roadrunners -3-point road favorites, 59.5 being the total. Interesting handicap here. I mean, UTSA, their quarterback, really good. I believe he's back now. And FAU, they found a little spark the last couple games, 2-0 AAC. They're back at home, competitively priced game here, -3. What are your thoughts in South Florida?
Also, double-digit wins once again. And this one would be a factor here because you've got two teams who love to throw the ball at times. Look, UTSA was widely considered to be one of the favorites in this conference preseason. It was them and Tulane and SMU. And UTSA comes out of the gate with that awful non-conference. And everybody's like, oh, man. And then Frank Harris comes back. They win at Temple. They go and they win that game last week against UAB. Their defense is still struggling at times. And you've got Florida Atlantic, who I thought was a sleeper in this conference. I love Tom Herman. I love what he does, especially early on at programs. We liked, obviously, the Thompson kid, Casey Thompson, at quarterback. Then he gets hurt, and Daniel Richardson, a guy we're familiar with because we did a lot of action talk. He's been doing great things there, and they're coming off the 56-14 win over USF. I write articles for FTNBets.com, and that's where I post my college football plays and stuff like that. And this was one of these show me something games. Show me that FAU is back. Show me that UTSA is back. Like, I think both of these teams have to prove that they are what we expected they are in the preseason. UTSA, the favorite, FAU, the widely considered underdog, potentially sleeper type candidate in this conference. I have a small lean to FAU here. I like what I've seen from them the last couple of weeks. I'm still concerned about UTSA's defense, maybe a FAU team total over when that comes out. That's something certainly to consider here. But I like Tom Herman a lot, and I like what he's done with those Owls.
Yeah, Tom Herman already 2-1 out the gate as an underdog. And remember, I don't know his exact record, but throughout his coaching career, Matt, as an underdog, it's something crazy. I'll have to find that. But do you remember what it is? Like at Texas, he was really good as an underdog.
I mean, yeah. Well, that was also because he inherited some bad teams at the time and had to work his way up. But yeah, he's one of these guys that you certainly like to back as an underdog, especially at home. And I imagine, and you can talk obviously more as the Florida guy, my Florida Atlantic's got a nice home field advantage, I would say.
It's actually not bad. That they got a nice little stadium there on campus. It's a pretty cool. It's growing a lot for sure. And the couple games that I've been to there in Boca Raton have been a good time. So yeah, for sure. It's called "Winning in Paradise" is kind of their slogan they're running with. We got Air Force and Navy up next. Academy special here, guys. Kicking us off on Saturday, 12 noon Eastern. We're seeing Air Force minus 10.5, 34.5 being the total. There is a 35 out there. So a low total, but service academies facing each other, Matt, are 10 and 40 to the under. 10 overs, 40 unders, their last 50, that being Air Force, Navy, and Army whenever they're playing each other. I don't know. That's a trend I think that does matter. Air Force laying double digits, though, Matt. This Air Force team is good. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously look at Zach Larrier's status for this game. Obviously, when we entered the season, the quarterback position for Air Force was a massive question mark, and Larrier played pretty well so far.
Really well.
He got hurt last game, and so his status is going to be very important here. But you mentioned it. I mean, the thing you do, and by the way, scattered showers and wind potentially, which I don't think would affect either of these two teams. They're two of the toughest teams in America, and they don't throw the ball very much. You got to take the underdog, especially you mentioned it, a 34 spread. So you're getting 11-ish points in a game that's going to see 34 points potentially. Navy doesn't exactly, I'm not doing cartwheels over Navy. They only won that game against Charlotte 14-0, and it took them a while to get those touchdowns. And to me, it's underdog or pass. I mean, I'm not going to take the under here. I can't even take the first quarter under because it's just going to be ridiculously low. It might even be like 6.5. And I always like having that touchdown cushion in the first quarter, and I don't even think I'm going to have that. So to me, if you're going to play this game, I would say take Navy plus the points. That's just the way you go in this situation. All these teams are kind of bunched up. Even when they're a lot better than one another, Drew, it still feels like these are all one-possession games.
Sure. At Mid-Major Matt on Twitter, every game on the board, wherever you're downloading your podcast at. Also going live on Twitter at Mid-Major Matt, at Drew Martin Betts, and on YouTube as well. Every game on the board. And YouTube, we go live here, Matt. Jerry Beatty saying, he's questioning where is the show because we're starting late. Sorry about that, guys. Life happens. Matt had a little thing to fix at his condo there. And we also got Ronnie saying, comment stat patter. Hey, that works too, guys. If you got nothing to say, we'll take a stat pad in the comments. No problem with that as we move down the list here. UL Monroe and Georgia Southern. We're seeing Georgia Southern minus 17-point home favorites, 59.5 being the total. Tough year here for the Warhawks. Georgia Southern laying 17 in Statesboro. Any interest here in South Georgia?
So I don't lay a lot of points usually. And in my article I wrote for FTN Bets, I called this a smash spot. I'll be on Georgia Southern. Now, the one thing that's going to be a little concerning is the wind. Something I'm going to monitor as we get closer because there are right now on a Wednesday, there could be a little bit of a wind thing, and that would affect Georgia Southern. But if I get the right conditions, Drew, I'm taking Georgia Southern minus the points. I'm taking Georgia Southern team total over. I might even take Georgia Southern first half team total over. One of my favorite bets several years ago, Louisiana Monroe, the past couple of years has been one of the worst first half defenses in the country. But you're going to get an angry Georgia Southern team coming off the loss to James Madison. The one thing to consider here for Georgia Southern is they are playing again on Thursday night the next week. So therefore, they might pull some guys, which might make that first half bet a little bit better here. But Louisiana Monroe was playing great against Texas State, lost that game late. Yeah, the Warhawks are terrible. You especially want to fade them on the road here. So maybe a first half Georgia Southern spread, first half Georgia Southern team total over here, because I expect them with pristine conditions to come out and smash in this situation.
We're getting right in Matt's wheelhouse here with App State and Old Dominion. We got some action on deck. 353, 354, -6 in the hook. That's App State. The Mountaineers is the road favorite. 53.5 being the total. App State at ODU, 7 o'clock Eastern here, Matt.
I kind of like ODU in this situation. I kind of do. One thing that's going to help, I think, scattered showers and wind potentially down in Norfolk. The Monarchs have played better than I thought. I'm worried about my under 3.5. They're at 3 wins now. They're playing teams. They won't be favored most likely the rest of the season, but this is an ODU team that's surpassing expectations. They're playing good enough defense, and their offense has found a little bit of success with Jack Shields under center. App State coming off the really tough loss to Coastal Carolina. It was, I believe, on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, so they've had some extra time to prepare. It was an emotional loss. It always is when those two teams play each other. Now they're going to a kind of a sleepy atmosphere in this game, Drew. I like ODU as plus the points in this situation. I could also be emotionally covering myself for the under 3.5 on the win total for the rest of the season. I'm not going to do that every week. I'm not going to cover myself because they're playing JMU next week. They're not beating JMU. But I like the Monarchs in this situation.
Action up next here. CMU, the Chippewas at Ball State. -4.5. That's Central Michigan as the road favorite. 40.5 the total in Muncie, Indiana, 3:30 Eastern.
Wind potentially double-digit gusts once again, although that won't be as much of an issue here. You've got two teams that pass the ball, but they're not great at it. And Central Michigan feeling good after the win over Akron, although it wasn't really a great-looking win. And Ball State played pretty well against Toledo, held them to 13 points, but I think part of that was the conditions. It was wet, it was windy, it was all that stuff. I can't play this game. This is one of those games, like, much like Rutgers, Central Michigan on the road. I don't trust them enough to cover the number. If Ball State from last week shows up, they may even win this game outright. But I certainly don't want to trust them as a home underdog in this situation. So this is a pretty easy pass here.
We're getting bottom of the barrel here, guys. Akron and Bowling Green. Bowling Green -7 in the hook as the home favorite. 38 being the total. We get the Falcons hosting the Zips.
What's funny is last year this was a 31-28 game. Now I don't think the total was as high as or as low as it was last year, but I think there's a situation potentially where you could see some points here. Bowling Green is coming off the win last week, 24-14. Akron lost 17-10 to Central Michigan. The problem is that, and this is what's in the spread here, is that you've got an Akron team that just doesn't score, and Bowling Green's defense has been pretty good on and off so far this season. It's one of those things, Drew. I can't lay points at Bowling Green, even though they're the better team in this situation. Once again, as we kind of discussed on the show, and some people will roll their eyes and some people will say I'm stupid, but if you believe in teasers, you want to tease this thing down 6 points, 7 points, and kind of essentially say Bowling Green, just win the game, and you find a couple of other things you like. That's always the issue for college football teasing, is you got to find 2 or 3 games that fit this situation. But if you can, I'm not opposed to teasing down Bowling Green to essentially ask them to win a game that they're probably going to win in this situation.
And some people, Matt, would say, oh, you can't tease college football. I would go back to, you got to look at what the total is. The reason people say that is because college football is more volatile, more scoring. Therefore, teasers would matter less. But in games like this, Matt might be onto something, guys. This is a sub 40 total, 38. And it's 7.5 as the spread. And when you're going to tease something, you want to go through 2 key numbers. And with this, you would go through 7 and 3. Therefore, with the low total, Matt, I actually think you can make the argument it could be a smart bet long term. Anything else on it?
Yeah, and I understand when they say that sort of thing, and the totals like set, like you would never tease the Oregon-Washington game because there was just so many swings and so many touchdowns. But yeah, this is one of those things where I think Bowling Green's going to win the game. Do I trust them to cover the 7.5? No, I don't. I don't trust them to cover the 7.5, but I think they're going to win. So why not take this situation and tease it down where they just essentially have to win?
Every game on the board, guys. About halfway through the segment here. Brought to you by Viva Tequila Seltzer. VivaTequilaSeltzer.com. Get it ordered to your house. Refreshing and drinkable hard seltzer. 88 calories, 0 carbs, 0 sugar, 4.5% ABV. Viva, the perfect drink for your pre or post-game celebrations, as it was created with the active lifestyle in mind. VivaTequilaSeltzer.com. We got Buffalo and Kent State up next. 3:30 Eastern here, Matt. -7. That's the Buffalo Bulls as the road favorite. 44.5 the total in Kent, Ohio.
Yeah, friends don't let friends bet on Kent State. I mean, it's just they're just a bad team. Last week in the conditions, they lose to Eastern Michigan at home. At Eastern Michigan, there's nothing that shows me their offense has got anything. There's nothing that shows me their defense has anything. So you're saying, well, okay, then I'm taking Buffalo. Buffalo just lost to Bowling Green, and Buffalo has been kind of a fraudulent team from the box score. You know, they had won the previous 2 games, but if you looked at the box scores, you're like, well, how did they actually win those games? So I know this is every game on the board, and we're trying to give advice out to everybody. My advice here is to just pass, because, you know, Kent State's unbettable, and there's no way you're going to tell me that Buffalo is a 7-point favorite over anybody, it feels like. So this is just an easy pass in this situation.
Staying with some action here, guys. Toledo and Miami of Ohio. We're seeing the Rockets -1 in the hook, as high as -2.5 as the short road favorites. 48.5 being the total. Miami of Ohio has been pretty good here, Matt. I saw something like ATS-wise, they're on a pretty good run this season. I don't know. Can they hang with Toledo?
Yeah, I like Miami, Ohio in this situation. You know, last week I tried to fade them with Western Michigan, figuring Miami, Ohio would be somewhat flat. Maybe the back door would be open late, and it wasn't. But I like this Miami, Ohio team. As long as Brett Gabbert is healthy, they've got the great weapons there. The Lardavane kid who came over from Southeast Louisiana, he made his presence felt in his return. And then Toledo has been kind of, you know, he's been very good this season. And obviously, I'm still bitter they lost the Illinois game way back in week 1. But last week they didn't play great, and maybe there was a lack of focus here. I kind of lean to Miami, Ohio. I think they could win this game outright. So maybe you don't even worry about the points and take the Miami, Ohio money line. I think they can keep up with Toledo here.
Matt, we get Maction, the weekday Maction starting, I believe, the 1st of November. Do you bet a lot of Maction, even if it's on Saturday?
Oh, of course. When I find the right situations. The thing is, yeah, obviously we've talked about all these games, and you've heard me so far say pass, pass, pass. In action, it feels like there's like 3 tiers of teams. There's the really good ones, there's like the okay ones, and then there's the really bad ones. And when the really bad ones play each other, you just run really far away. I actually did notice that Toledo is playing Buffalo on Halloween, and I literally said, there is no better pairing, Drew, than MAC football and Halloween. So we're going to get that this year.
Oh, nice. And that must be the first week of the midweek Maction, something like that. So Halloween night, we're getting Maction.
Yep.
Awesome, man. Western Michigan and Ohio. Speaking of Maction, the Bobcats -17-point home favorites, 53 being the total. This is an Ohio team that went down to Boca Raton and beat FAU, which we talked about. Now they're hosting Western Michigan here, but the ultimate equalizer, can they win by more than 17, Matt?
I mean, if there's a team that would, I think it would be Ohio. They do have Miami, Ohio next, so maybe they pull off a little bit. I mean, obviously, standings, there's still plenty of time. There's still about, I think, 4 or 5 games left, so there's still a lot of things that can be decided. But when you're looking at that side of the MAC conference, Ohio and Miami, Ohio are the 2 best teams. So certainly they could get out to a nice lead. I'm not going to believe in Western Michigan anymore. I thought, as I said, I thought they would cover against Miami, Ohio. Their offense is pretty pitiful. You know, maybe a look at the over here if you think Ohio can carry the points, but you're going to ask Western Michigan to score for you, and I don't know how much they're going to do so. The one thing we've talked about is they go fast, so their 3 and outs are fast, their drives are fast, and that's always good if you're looking at an over.
Heading to the Big Ten up next here, guys. Wisconsin and Illinois. We're seeing the Badgers -2.5 as the short road favorite. 42 being the total. Wisconsin Badgers at Illinois Illini from Champaign, Indiana.
Wind could be a factor here. Double-digit wins, mile-per-hour wins possible. So just something to watch here. Wisconsin, you know, situationally, this is a terrible spot for Wisconsin. They come off with a miserable game against Iowa. They've got Ohio State at home next week, and Tanner Mordecai is not starting at quarterback. Braden Locke is going to be the starting quarterback for Wisconsin. You've got an Illinois team that's feeling good after the late win over Maryland. They've got a bye next week, so if they get the win, they'll have 2 weeks to at least enjoy it. Situationally, Drew, this feels like an Illinois game. This feels like an opportunity. They've got a really good defense. You got a backup quarterback in for Wisconsin. They've got Ohio State next week. So situationally, I think Illinois is the only play in this situation.
We got Eastern Michigan and Northern Illinois with another MAC game up next with Northern Illinois minus 12-point home favorites, 45 being the total. Eastern Michigan at Northern Illinois.
What is it we always say, Drew? It's the same thing every time, and I'm going to keep living by it. You bet on Eastern Michigan under Chris Creighton as an underdog. You most likely stay away from them as a favorite. We covered with them against Ball State 2 weeks ago. But I mean, Eastern Michigan, double-digit underdog. Here's a fun stat for Eastern Michigan. They average 19 points a game. That's 11th worst in the country. Defensively, they're holding teams to 19.4 points per game, which is 28th in the country. So they're playing low-scoring games. They're ugly games, to say the least. Their passing attack is like one of the worst in the country. You can give me a lot of points here. They could be playing an NFL team, Drew, and I would probably still take Eastern Michigan to cover the number. I just believe in Chris Creighton. I believe in the way he prepares his team for things like that. Northern Illinois has played better. I'm really happy for my over 5.5 wins for Northern Illinois. The Huskies are playing better, and I know they're the home team here, but I'm a believer in Chris Creighton as an underdog.
Fair enough, Matt. As we got just a couple of games left here, guys. Every game on the board brought to you by betonline.ag. Sportsbook sponsor for the show, YouTube, podcast form, every game on the board. Also on Twitter at Drew Martin Bets, at Midmajor Matt, betonline.ag. The game starts here. We got Minnesota and Iowa up next. Hawkeyes minus 3.5-point home favorites. Matt, we're seeing a 31.5 as the total, not first half total, game total here, guys. 31.5. Iowa minus 3.5 at home. Minnesota at Iowa here, Matt.
Once again, double-digit wins. And I mean, I don't think it's going to affect anybody. Deacon Hill was 6 of 14 last week for Iowa for 37 yards, and they still won the game. Look, Brian Ferentz obviously needs to score more points because he's going to lose his job. He's going to lose his bonus. They are well behind the number that was set, and I don't think they're getting it here. The one thing we know about Minnesota is their defense is pretty good. They're coming off a bye week, so they've had 2 weeks to watch this Iowa, offense and kind of laugh a little bit. Eric All's out. The Lachey kid is out. They've had some injuries in the running back room. Their quarterback is out. Like their offense is absolutely brutal. I'm trying to figure out here, Drew. Maybe you can help me. Am I getting like a 17.5 team total for Iowa here? Figuring it's going to be like a 17.5 and a 13.5 probably. If I get a 17.5, I might look under for Iowa here with any sort of wind and any sort of good defense from Minnesota. I think this is like a 14-10 type of game.
Well, I mean, I guess we could just do the projected team total. 31.5 in a half would just be what, let's call it 16. And then for them to win by 3, that would put it 18-14. So it'd probably be 17.5 if I had to say what the side and total is projecting.
Yeah, and I would take the under in Iowa. This feels like a 14-10 game. I mean, this Deacon Hill kid, they talked about his arm, and maybe he's going to complete a deep pass soon, but all the tight ends are hurt, and all the running backs, it feels like, I mean, they've had some back, but I don't trust this offense in the least. So give me an Iowa team total under here. 2 weeks to look at this thing. Minnesota should be ready.
I'm more of a sides and totals for the whole game type guy. Do you notice that they'll go off of that, the odds makers? Like if the total and the spread, will they just do the math like we just did, or will they ever go off of what that number is?
No, sometimes they won't because the total will move, and sometimes the team totals do not move, or sometimes they kind of stay firm on their team totals. Like they won't go to key numbers, or they'll stay on key numbers. It's really a fascinating market because obviously you want a 21.5 if you want the under, you want a 20.5 if you want the over. So like the books know the key numbers when it comes to these team totals, and they'll either stick to them even if everything else around it moves, or they'll change things up a little bit because of that. So it's a fascinating market. It's all about finding the right number and having a number in your mind. Like, as we just said, I'm looking for 17.5. If I get more than 17.5, great. If I get 16.5, I probably won't play the under. So it's all about picking out the number in your head and making sure you can get it.
Ronnie helping us out saying he sees a 16.5. So I don't know. Maybe with the Hawkeyes, that might change things. Thanks, Ronnie, for the update. As we got Texas Tech and BYU up next, 7 o'clock Eastern here. We're seeing Texas Tech minus 4.5 point road favorites, 52 the total. Big 12 matchup in Provo.
So you got a Texas Tech team coming off the loss of Kansas State. Their quarterback is the game time decision, the Morton kid. So that's another injury already to Texas Tech's quarterback situation. And then you got BYU, who just got blasted at TCU. They got Texas on the road next week. One of their best tackling linebackers, Ben Bywater, is out. Safety Tanner Wall is out for the season. Another player transferred out. I feel like BYU is getting a taste of the full Power 5 schedule. You know, you can dip in and out when you're an independent. You can play one or two of these games and then kind of like get back to playing your other ones. They're getting the full force of a Power 5 schedule. And so far, their defense is starting to see some wear and tear here. But I can't bet on Texas Tech unless I know who's under center. So this is one of those things where if you do want to bet Texas Tech and you have confidence in their backup quarterback, you probably take them now. If you don't have confidence in any sort of quarterback, then you wait until closer. I can't take BYU, true. Their defense is starting to lose some pieces. But certainly I need to know who Texas Tech's quarterback is going to be.
And last one here, guys. For this section, we'll get a best bet from Matt Josephs. Hawaii at New Mexico. We're seeing the Rainbow Warriors pick them to as high as minus 1.5. High water mark is at Bet Online. 60 being the total. Hawaii on the mainland here against New Mexico.
I love taking New Mexico overs. We gave out the New Mexico over a couple weeks ago as our best bet here. I think people still, now they're starting to catch up because obviously the number keeps going up. But New Mexico is not bad in offense. Last year they were abysmal, but like, you know, with the Hopkins kid at quarterback and with the system they put in, they're another team that goes really fast. You know, the over was at 57.5 earlier in the week. So obviously you're missing the best number here. You've got a Hawaii team that traditionally is very poor away from the islands. They don't play any defense and they do the run and shoot, although it's more the shooting part than the running part because they don't run the ball very well. So they pass it a lot. To me, the only play here would be the over. I think that New Mexico is going to score some points on Hawaii. I think Hawaii is going to score some points. And I'll tell people this. There is a market that I really like out there that has touchdowns where you can play just the touchdowns, you know, over 3.5, over 4.5 touchdowns. I'm interested to know what the numbers are for the touchdowns in Hawaii and New Mexico because I'd potentially look at the over for either of them. Hell, maybe even both of them potentially. That's another market that I haven't dabbled in as much, Drew, so I can't tell you about how they kind of set that up. There has been times, you know, last week or 2 weeks ago, there was an over 3.5 touchdowns for Toledo, yet their team total was like 30.5. Well, you could score 4 touchdowns and get 28 and win the touchdown bet, but lose the team total bet. So it's one of those things where you have to compare the numbers because you might find some value in one of those markets if you like that one more than the other one.
Well said here, Matt. And guys, we'll get a best bet from Matt. Hitting 3 straight here on the podcast. Shout out to Viva Tequila Seltzer, sponsor of the show. Check them out, vivatequilaseltzer.com. Our belief is to live long, live well, and live it up. Hashtag Viva Up, vivatequilaseltzer.com. BetOnline.ag. The game starts here. And here we are getting a best bet from Matt Josephs. Matt, I'll throw it over to you. Any final thoughts for the show and where you want to head for best bet?
I mean, you know, I wanted to go with the over in the New Mexico-Hawaii game. It keeps going up, so I'm going to get away from that. I mean, there's one thing that I stick to, and it's Eastern Michigan is an underdog. You know, they, as we just said, 19 points per game they average as an offense, which is 11th worst in the country, but their defense is 28th in scoring defense. Northern Illinois has played better. They're coming off the win over Ohio, an emotional homecoming game. Now they've got Eastern Michigan coming in. I still don't necessarily completely believe in Northern Illinois' offense. I think Northern Illinois' defense you can exploit a little bit. And you're giving me double digits here, so give me Eastern Michigan. Chris Creighton teams just know how to cover the number as an underdog.
All right, we can it's 12.5 at some shops. So for record-keeping purposes, we can give you Eastern Michigan plus 12.5.
Sounds good to me. And for my final thought here, Drew, is go Phillies. By the time we do the next one, they'll be in the World Series.
All right, you're feeling confident, huh? It's Phillies to the World Series. You think they win it all?
Yeah, of course I do. I have a nice 15-1 ticket from the preseason. Now, of course, it was the homer bet I make every year before the season begins, but I have a nice 15-1 ticket on the Phillies to win the World Series.
All right, Phillies, guys. We'll stay updated on that next week. Thanks for tuning in. Smash that like button, YouTube, wherever you're downloading your podcast at. Every game on the board. We'll be back tomorrow, guys, finishing it off with the 2 sections with Gabe Morency and Beating the Bookie. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for tuning in. Cash those tickets.